Okay. Looks like people are starting to filter in there. Look, we might kick off this panelist discussion here today. Look, I welcome everyone from across the country here that are dialing in to listen to this panel discussion. I think it's going to be an interesting topic. My name is Daniel Eagling. I am the Vice President of the Ireland chapter of Project Management Institute here, and we are proudly sponsored by Castile for this lovely panelist discussion. We are fortunate enough to have Matthew joining us on the panel discussion, along with Johnny and Dara. And I might pass it over to yourselves just to do a quick introduction, and then we'll get into the discussion. So Matthew, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Thanks for the welcome and the invite. So I'm Matthew Camilleri. I'm CEO and founder of Castile. Castile is an Irish headquartered skills augmentation platform. We have active teams in over 30 countries. And I'm also on the board of TIA, which is the new name for IT at Cork. And I live in Cork. So that's me.
Excellent. We won't hold that against you living in Cork. I'm sure
Thanks,
there's
Daniel.
some Cork folk on the call with us. I'll throw it over to you, Johnny.
Thanks. So my name's Johnny Mooney. I'm working with Explio for the last 7.5 years, mainly focused around business and digital transformation programs. I'm also on the board of the PMI Ireland chapter. So glad to be here today.
Thanks, Johnny. And over to yourself, Dara.
Yeah, hi. So Dara Cullen's my name. I'm a partner in the consulting business in EY. I lead the complex transformation team. So as part of our transformation delivery practice, I lead the complex transformation team and have about 15 years consulting experience in kind of leading and then delivering large scale kind of transformation projects, primarily in the energy sector. That's my bio.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, gents. Look, I might kick this off here with the question of how do you manage urgent requirements for project resources, particularly where there is a skills shortage? And I might bring this first one to you, Matthew.
Thanks, Daniel. So, I mean, I'm not going to bore you with all the literature, right? So there's loads of it out there and research, but clearly there is a global structural shortage. So if you listen to the likes of McKinsey, Harvard Business Review, they would size that shortage at anything between 40 and 80 million by 2050. So clearly there's an issue. And, whatever we do at a national level or a company level, we're bound to have skills gaps, right? And when it comes to skilling up projects, there's added complexity because obviously there's the timing, and there's the specificity of the skills mix, which, as we know, is becoming less and less vanilla as we speak. So what we see customers doing, obviously, it's two things. There's no rocket science. Our customers and partners have a twofold strategy. The first is obviously building up their core, upskilling, and making sure their traditional bench is well sized and well versed in the skills that their projects require. And the second is that we're seeing obviously a lot more companies realizing that partnering for skills is obviously becoming an important part of your resource planning strategy.
Oh, that's very interesting. And I guess to build on that, Dara, would you have any perspective on that one as well?
Yeah, look, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything Matthew said. I think one of the things, I suppose, in relation to where there's a skills shortage, right, and kind of urgent requirements. So I guess one of the things that we look to do in a consulting house and in a kind of a project delivery environment is looking for opportunities where you can maybe put people into stretch roles and train them on the job, right? And it's a tricky situation, particularly in a kind of a client-facing environment, but ultimately, sometimes it's a sink or swim type environment, and you put people into the role, put some strong SMR support around them and give them an opportunity to plug a gap and kind of learn skills and learn on the job. So that's sort of, I would say, one opportunity. And then the other thing is sometimes to look at, are there activities that are planned for now that could maybe be postponed with a view to having the resource that was going to carry those out, who has the skills to do them? So, looking at your project plan and looking at the opportunities to sort of to replan such that the activity can be carried out, and that just has to work in tandem with your overall sort of resource planning and project management plan.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I'd imagine that creates its own inherent issues and challenges in itself, trying to train on the job, as we're probably all aware of. And I guess, Johnny, what's your insights to this one?
I suppose trying to be as prepared as possible for when those requirements or urgent requests come in. So working very collaboratively with the client base that we have to understand maybe what their strategic pipeline might look like, what future demands might be, even if that's a little bit of a kind of finger in the air exercise at that point in time. At least you might get a better understanding of what kind of skills or capabilities they might be looking for in the future, and then try and kind of make sure that you're prepared for that. And a key aspect to that can also be identifying what are their core technologies that they're using. So is there an opportunity there to have your project managers upskilled and trained in those various different technologies, so that if that urgent requirement does come in, at least they can focus on applying good project management and getting the projects or programs, up to speed the way they need it to, without having that sort of what's the word? Basically they can hit the ground running, and the technology aspect specific to that client isn't going to hold them back with getting things off the ground. And through having that close relationship as well with the various stakeholders that you'll be interacting with, is, while we know what a good project manager looks like, but what does a successful project manager look like for that organization? So what are the key things there that they're focused on, and how can we make sure that we have the correct pipeline of talent developed and ready to go should those requirements come in?
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. Sorry, just one bit of house admin. I forgot to remind everyone, if you do have questions, please put them into the question and answers or into the chat. Mariana and Eamon are in the background monitoring that, and we will try and answer as many as we can, being it is a panel discussion, so we will try to get them through to everyone to be answered. Dara, I might bring this next one to you, and it's kind of building on sort of what you were touching on there with regards to the impact of trying to learn on the job. And I'd be curious as to, how do you avoid increased pressure and stress on existing team members when there is a skills shortage on a project? And I think that'd be fairly relevant when you're trying to get those things over the line on a quick timeline.
Yeah, I was thinking about this one last night, and it's something that we come across a lot, right? Where you have single points of failure on a project, and it's generally due to you've got a couple of people who are deep experts in a particular area of expertise. I work in the energy sector, so it could be something to do with the energy transition, and they don't grow on trees, this type of experience. So how do you manage it when all of the requests are coming into a particular person? So look, I don't think there's any kind of right or wrong answer here as such, but I think what we look to do is are there opportunities to sort of pair people together, so buddy up an experienced person with a less experienced person, to get upskilled, but also to share the load, right? So this could be pairing a graduate or something like that with somebody who's a little bit more experienced. If you're in a client-facing environment, obviously you need to agree these things with the client, but ultimately you're looking to stretch and test the less experienced resource, take a little bit of load off the more experienced, and have them focused on reviewing rather than doing. So that's sort of one option, right, which isn't always going to be an option. I think one of the things that we do in our model is we challenge our more experienced resources to think about their own succession planning. So obviously in consulting, you've got a sort of a progression type model where you're looking to move to the next level, and part of that is bringing people along with you. So I'm constantly challenging my team members to think about who can do the work that they're currently doing, and if they get a promotion, who's going to take over from them. So I think that's something to think about in the day-to-day of a project management as well. Who else could potentially do this if I was to move on to other activities, be they more value add or a different activity on a program? Look, I think ultimately it comes down to clarity of roles, understanding the deliverables, managing expectations, in such a way that to avoid single points of failure. So that you're not having key kind of program activities maybe happening in parallel where there's a particular pinch point on a particular resource, and to the best of your ability, understanding where kind of skills or capability gaps exist, and then looking for opportunities to address those through either resource augmentation or redeployment or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting insight. And Matthew, I see you taking some notes there. I'm curious your thoughts on this one as well. And
no, to be honest, I'm just taking a cue from Dara's comments because I found the pairing quite interesting. I mean, I came across a statistic saying that 90% of tech skills are learned on the job, and I think that's totally right. So the more exposure you can give your core skills, your core teams, the better it is. But it's not easy, as we all know. There's a lot of time pressure all the time, and what we're seeing is that a lot of these digital solutions, digital journeys are requiring very specific skills, and often they're a combination of all the above. So maybe 10 years ago we used to look for skills which are pretty much well defined and what I call mainstream, and today it's a combination of cyber and AI, AI and cloud. So it's obviously more difficult to acquire that kind of expertise.
Yeah, it seems to be the common trend is that you're always learning and always going to continue to learn. And I think in this day and age, we're looking for more the well-rounded versus somebody that's potentially specific to one aspect of a job as things progress. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that transforms. Might bring it to the next question. What innovative solutions have you implemented to address skills shortages for your projects, technical and non-technical requirements aspects? I might bring this first one to you, Johnny, and then I might bring it over to you, Matthew, for your perspective.
Sure.
I think it kind of touches on some of the points that Dara and Matthew were mentioning there in the last question, and it's really about the people being your greatest asset. And often a lot of the skills and knowledge will live within an individual, within an organization. While you may have great capabilities and solutions and frameworks that are developed, a lot of the skills and knowledge will live in the individual. So how do you draw that out of them and do that kind of learning across and disseminate that knowledge across your work stream? So some of the things that we look to do is develop centers of to give that opportunity for the knowledge transfer and sort of centers of SME knowledge, as well as do that kind of peer-led training or mentoring so that those people who don't have that experience have the opportunity to learn from the more experienced PMs. There's other things as well, like regular sort of lunch and learn sessions whereby one of our PMs will put together a presentation on a specific area that could be on a softer skills base, such as dealing with stakeholders or communication, or it could be specifically around something more technical that they've been working on. It's a great opportunity for them to share the lessons learned that they have. So real hands-on experience about what was challenging and how they actually overcame it. And other things as well that we do is, set strategic pillars. So these are outside of normal project activities and things we want to do, be that grow, build, or enhance different things within the organization. And they're going to be led by people who are best placed or who have maybe done similar things before. But then that gives the opportunity to put more junior PMs maybe working with them so that they can learn from them as well and get more upskilled and give them an opportunity to maybe work in an area that they haven't previously, which is another example of that kind of cross-skilling within your own team and focused on that. Another thing as well is important, I think, is identifying people with the appropriate skills and experience that could support an ongoing project that they're maybe not currently on. Similar to mitigating against a risk, if there's an urgent need, you've built up that understanding to have already identified, okay, there's maybe 5 key PMs that we have that aren't currently on this project, that should we need to ramp up, or if somebody needs to even, say, touch wood, go out sick for a period of time, that you know who can move in quickly to be able to support those different activities. And that really, I suppose, it are some of the ways that you can try and disseminate that wider knowledge across your work stream. But understanding that, you know, people on a more individual level as well, it helps identify if you have a particular shortage of a soft skill or a technical skill within your team and your group. And one of the things you can do then is focus on that throughout your ongoing recruitment. So it may be that you're recruiting for a specific area, but you're also interested in increasing skills and capabilities in another area within your PM stream. So through that, then, you know, you can focus on that in recruitment and identify individuals or potential candidates that would be extremely useful and beneficial to your work stream. Yeah.
Sorry, just while we're on that one, Johnny, and just something popped into my mind and curious is, do you find that, you know, with the work from home or working remotely aspect has impacted on that ability to share the knowledge across, you know, you're saying you kind of have your 5 core PMs that, you know, you can lean on. Do you find it's now harder to do that knowledge transfer, or just curious with this day and age?
I do. I think it does. And that's why we try to put in these kind of regular mechanisms or vehicles that we can do that learning and share that knowledge. One thing which I think is hugely impacted people, especially as they're coming out of college or beginning their career, is without realizing it, you were picking up so much through osmosis from being in the office 5 days a week. It was very easy to recognize going, oh, there's Daniel. Daniel's, you know, he seems to be getting on very well here. He's a bit of a hot shot about the office. And just ask yourself, you know, what's he doing? Like, how does he carry himself? What way does he speak? How does he interact with people? And then learning, okay, but that's what is successful. And that's then you pick up, you know, great kind of skills and characteristics from those individuals. But that's literally by being around and observing them. So I think that that's a huge aspect that has been lost from the remote working and working from home. But of course, we see much more of a hybrid model happening now. So those opportunities are coming back. But you do need to have different, I hope that they don't happen themselves, that you do need to put in support mechanisms to try and drive those different activities to benefit others. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's partly why it's a core pillar of the project management, you know, PMBOK, you know, with regards to the power skills and having that aspect to it. So I think that is a challenge that's going to continue. Curious your thoughts, Matthew, on the question.
No, totally agree with what Johnny said. And I guess the work from home phenomena it cuts both sides, right? So it's given huge flexibility. It's broadened our horizons, but on the other hand, it's true, we have lost, I think, especially at the more junior level, where, you know, people sort of get, you know, used to develop their skills just by being around more senior and experienced people. I mean, from Castile's end, we've been working on this skills gap issue for many years. And clearly, when you look at it, there's always going to be a skills gap. So what we try to do is open up new talent pools within time zone, but do it in a safe way, right? So the way we did it was we built a network across, not to sound too fancy, but we've built a network across the world, right? And we've created this digital funnel where we're attracting people who are interested in partnering up on SOWs, specifically within technology, right? But we've come up with a very sort of robust vetting process where we validate their track record, and we do it through verified professional references. So they subscribe to the platform to partner on SOWs. And what we do is we provide our partners and customers with access to this vetted network who they can partner with in terms of their client projects. It's worked well. I mean, it's been going now for the last 7 years. More recently, we've broken outside of our home market. And outside of our home market, we're totally focusing on channel partners. So we're working with system integrators, IT consultancies, digital agencies. And, you know, one might argue, yes, but it's always been there. Sort of one could always do that. But we found that by sort of applying a proper vetting process to new talent pools across the same time zone, it tends to work better. So it is a bit of innovation. It's using technology. So the vetting process is totally automated. And we have about 30 months worth of post-deployment data, which is telling us, the performance is very good. So the quality bar is quite high. That is our sort of bit of contribution towards innovation in this area.
That's very interesting, and I just want to hone in on one comment that you made with regards to the younger generation coming in, and I guess
Yes.
How do we, like, are you seeing that there's an issue or potentially a prolongation of that skills being transferred from the more experienced down to that younger generation due to the work from home, hybrid working, and so forth, and obviously with technology coming in with AI and so forth, like, do you see that gap potentially getting bigger?
I think it's definitely there. So it's one of the disadvantages of the new way of working, so to say. But
Yeah.
I think people adapt, right? So
Very
I
true.
think these team calls are becoming better. You can sort of, as Johnny said, there's the hybrid model. So people can work remotely or even not in country and partner with people who are not even in country or the same continent. But then you have business travel, you have conferences, you have collaboration days. So I guess the good thing about the human race is that obviously we adapt, and I'm sure that space will be filled.
Yeah.
There's definitely benefits to that remote working as well.
Absolutely.
It's huge. I mean, one thing just straight away is it opens up the talent pool that you're able to pull from if it
Totally.
doesn't just have to be immediately localized. But again, just one of the things for the more junior people is potentially they could be struggling with something, and it could be putting a deck together or some aspect of the normal job. And that's kind of hidden then because they're at home on a desk and they're maybe struggling for half the day. Whereas if they were in the office, somebody might see that they're struggling with it and be able to go over and just desk stop quite quickly, give them a few pointers, and then they're away. And that bit of learning, I fear, is a bit lost because maybe there's a bit of hesitation to actually kind of reach out and be like, I'm actually really struggling with this, and can you give me advice? And sometimes that may go on for a day or two before somebody reaches out, whereas in an office environment, it's obviously a bit more noticeable, maybe.
Yeah,
To be
and I
honest,
guess,
what I worry about, sorry, Dan.
no, go on, Matthew, go on.
I was just going to say what I worry about is more on the soft side. I think on the technical side,
Yeah.
that gap will be filled pretty quickly, right? But I think on the soft side, a lot of the things we learn in an office environment become second nature very quickly. And that's because we are, in the presence of people who are doing it right. You don't have that luxury in a more flexible workspace.
Yeah,
That's very
100%,
true. And I guess,
100%
Derek,
agree. I think,
curious.
yeah, look, I mean, I kind of agree with everything that's been said, and like I think one of the answers that I prepared for another question has probably been answered as well. But I think that particularly around more junior resources, I 100% agree with Matthew there on that soft side thing, and learning how to, particularly in a client facing role, right? So I've been client facing for 15 years or so. Like a big part of my development was watching and observing how my project managers, senior managers, etc., behaved and interacted with clients, not just how they spoke to them, how they listened and actively listened and that type of thing. And yes, you can train and you can practice that and all that kind of stuff, but there's nothing like being in that environment and observing it around you, and I think in terms of bridging gaps, right, like there's something that we can do there in terms of implementing that hybrid model, right, and having those sort of anchor days in an office or being in that team environment. And that's often a quick win if there's space available, and there isn't always space available, right? So we do have to acknowledge that. But where there's space available is to have those anchor days where you're on site together, and have the ability. And then if you can supplement that with the things that Johnny was talking about in terms of like maybe conducting a bit of a lunch and learn type session or something like that, then all the better, right? And I see a question in there when attracting talent and stuff like that, and it's the ability to do that, I think, and challenge people to say, well, if you come into an office this is what you're going to get from it, right? You're going to get a social aspect of it, right? You're going to get, great learning, but, you'll also make, great relationships and, so you kind of have to offer that package, but you'll still have flexibility. So, on the days that you can't make things because of childcare arrangements or because of, whatever stage of life you're at, there's something that they need to do, then that's fine. And the technology will allow us to do it. So it's a fine balance to be struck, and you've seen the likes of AWS, and these guys are like, no, 5 days a week back on site, and we're still kind of doing a hybrid model. So it's interesting to see how it'll play out. I'm probably seeing a trend of more days in the office than less, but I still enjoy. I have a long commute to come into the office, so I'm happy to work from home. But I'm conscious of my role as a partner in the firm to be there and being on site as well to help others around me to develop. So it's a balance to be struck, but it's a fascinating one, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it is going to be interesting to see where the future goes with it. Look, I definitely don't want to say it in a negative light. The hybrid working. I mean, I know personally from experience, it's fantastic. It creates a lot of exposure, and I think to your point, Johnny and Matthew, with regards to access to talent around the world, it's huge, and I think there's a lot of opportunity with where we've gone to now post COVID, I'll call it, which is very exciting. Might just jump into this next one. It's kind of tied to the last one. How has the market changed in recent months? Is there an increased supply of talent in certain areas? And I know, look, we've gone through a lot of change over the last couple of years, but we'll try and keep it to sort of the last 6 months, we'll call it, and kind of where we're going, and where is the talent sitting? And I might bring that to you, Matthew, first.
Sure. I guess so. The viewer is going to have pockets of skills coming available, around economic and sectoral cycles. But I guess my take on it is that there's still overall a very sort of big shortage across the tech space, especially in the technical areas. I mean, where we see a lot of demand is in areas like cloud, cyber, still, very, very strong, AI, data. As well as sort of specific ERPs like SAP HANA, given what's happening with SAP going forward, Salesforce, those types of areas. Demand is still extremely high. And then, as I said before, when it comes to specific projects, there's often a skills combination element to them. So yes, I need a cyber architect, but they need to have had experience in SAP integrations, for example, So it's that type of angle where there's always a skills gap, and it's much harder to fill,
Absolutely, that's an interesting insight, Johnny. I guess what's your take on that as well?
I fully agree in the sense of, if you just take S4HANA as an example, for those very technical, specific needs, is that I think you're always going to see a bit of a shortage, and it's S4HANA as a key example at the moment, but there'll be something else then as well in the future. So trying to find a combination of the strong technical PM with that very specific technical experience plus the soft skills will always be a challenge. But there are other, I'd say, more general kind of project management skills and resources that you've probably seen a bit more of an uptick in. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with, there was the rapid need for hiring during COVID, as a lot of organizations got up to skills with going digital and being able to work remotely. And then, as we've seen, there's a kind of a bit of a restructuring, and there's also then a hesitation to take on some larger capital projects or to make large investments in what they're looking to do over the next 12 or 18 months, given some uncertainties around the globe that we're all aware of. So in some areas, the more generalized skill sets, there's probably a bit of an uptick in the market, but definitely those technical side of technical needs is always going to be limited. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. And Dara, do you have any input on that one, an insight?
Yeah, look, I suppose again, kind of agree with what the guys are saying. I'm primarily based in the energy sector, as I mentioned, and there's a huge market in the energy sector at the moment, given the climate action plan here. You know, there's lots of net zero strategies that clients are trying to implement. So, you know, trying to get the skills for you know, people who have done this before is particularly difficult. I think from my perspective, I'm looking specifically at kind of demand response and demand flexibility. And if you look across other jurisdictions in Europe and globally, there isn't a sort of a world leader or a best in class. There's pockets of it in Australia, there's pockets of it in the US, there's pockets of it in Europe, but everyone is at the sort of we're all at a kind of a similar stage in the journey, right? And for energy transition specifically. So when you're looking to get experts in things, that they're very hard to find, you know, and they may exist in an organization that you can't partner with, for example, right? So that rules out your partnership, you know, opportunity. So, yeah, look, I mean, I think I agree with Johnny. Like the technical skills element, like it does feel like, you know, I'm getting asked by my clients a lot for very specific skills. Have you got somebody who can do this, that, and the other? And you're like, yes, I do, but they're sold to about 3 other projects, so I don't have them available. And, you know, where can I go to next? And that's where you're into things like, you know, do we need to recruit? Can we recruit? Do we have a partnership option? Do we have a contracting option? So, yeah, I mean, like I would say that I wouldn't say it's necessarily changed massively in the last 3 months, but I'm starting to see that more and more as the complex as the problems become more complex and they need these kind of technical expertise. That expertise is harder and harder to come by.
Yeah, and I will say,
I was just going to say, like in energy is a great example, is that there's major transformation initiatives and there, you know, there's regulations, there's all these things that are coming in, and that whole landscape is being transformed. And, you know, there's the clients, or there's people running programs that are looking for a specific experience, and you're kind of going, nobody's done this before, you know, like that's the thing. There's maybe they did it somewhere in Germany, but you know, the pool of people who actually have very direct experience in those areas can be extremely limited, if not near impossible. You know, I think you need to look, like what we're talking about here is how do you develop some of those skills. So what is the core base that you're looking for? And then how can we make sure that more technical nuances are built up? And that could be partnering project managers with engineers and that sort of thing, because it's definitely a challenge. Yeah.
And you have to remember that, you know, everyone's kind of going through it at the same time as well, right? So you know, whether they're our clients or whether, you know, it's an S4HANA thing and it's going out of support at a certain time, you know, your old instances, it's like, well, you know, so that creates the demand, right? So like anybody who's an SAP house has to upgrade. So, you know, there's a gluttony of people looking for the same skills in the market. You know, if it's an electricity market directive that has to be implemented in 2026, all the players in the industry have to abide by it. So again, you're creating demand for these problems by these. And look, the regulations are fine. I'm not complaining about those, but it's like, you know, that's the decision that's taken. But what it does is it does create a real challenge for people to get the relevant skills.
Absolutely, and I'll just jump in there. I would say firsthand from our sides, you know, I'm background of real estate development, and it's exactly that. You know, obviously there's a huge shortage on the housing front, and it's to get the skilled workers, both, you know, boots on the ground, developing the construction, to PMs in-house, you know, managing the construction from acquisition all the way through to key turnover it's hard, especially, you know, as you say, there's kind of a target out there and a mandate to deliver. You know, I think it's across the board in every sector at the moment. It's fairly evident that, you know, obviously with green initiatives that are coming out and energy transitions and businesses transforming and changing, it seems to be across the board that there's that shortage of the skill of being able to get the projects over the line.
Ideally, it's.
Sorry, Johnny.
I think that there's like if you have the luxury of being able to do this, ideally it would be great if you can get people with more technical capability and then grow them to be project managers, coupled with project managers to grow their technical ability. So, you know, creating that kind of dichotomy in the team. But as I say, sometimes you don't have that luxury to be able to do that. But that is another way to try and, you know, get the technical side up and get the project management side up who have the technical skills. And
It
And
goes
yeah,
back to kind of what Darryl was saying earlier with regards to trying to train on the job, isn't it? To some
Yes.
extent, it's
I mean,
not easy.
in the same vein, what we've had partners coming to us to say is, listen, sort of we're Azure cloud space, right? We're in that space, and we have very well qualified people in our core team, but we're having our customers come to us and they want to, also include the Google Cloud, for example. So what they tell us is, give us a virtual bench of cloud engineers or architects. They work alongside our internal teams, and they upskill them at the same time in the Google Cloud. So I think sort of in terms of resource planning, one also needs to look at both securing capacity, but also upskilling opportunities, whereby you're continuously upskilling your sort of internal core teams. And you can use partnering for that too, I guess,
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring it to the next question here. How do you envision the future, and what skills do you think will be essential? And I'd like to hone in on, from an AI perspective, which skills will remain valuable and which ones, should change and grow. And I might bring this one to you first, Matthew.
Mm-hmm. No, so to be honest, there's a lot of change afoot, right? There are a lot of AI skills which are becoming extremely valuable, right? Especially in terms of experience, specifically with AI technologies. However, what I'm seeing is, it's more the combination with other skills, as we said before. So, for example, I asked the team, and they mentioned, for example, cloud and AI infrastructure, for example, cybersecurity in AI, or maybe also AI-driven product development, So it's more AI in the application than AI for its own sake, kind of thing. That is where we're seeing skills changing and evolving.
Interesting. And Dara, from your perspective?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think with respect to AI, right, we need to think of AI in terms of augmenting existing capability and harnessing it to increase efficiency so that we can spend time on so-called more kind of value add or valuable activities, right? We're still going to require project managers with experience of solving problems and being involved in sort of complex projects and steering projects and programs. So it's how do we use the capabilities that AI has, right? So I think it'll take away maybe some of the elements of sort of research. It'll take away some elements of maybe like time intensive activities for potentially reading documents or writing documents or tidying them up, etc. But ultimately, Matthew mentioned earlier around the soft skills challenge that we have with some maybe junior resources as a result of the hybrid model. It's a similar thing with AI, right? Like it can't sit in a room and explain why a milestone's been missed to a client, right? So you need to think of it as a means of sort of how can I use this to my advantage in my day to day. Something that we're seeing a lot of is using it for training, right? So some of my clients have significant numbers of staff that require quite technical training, right? Be that electrical engineering or something along those lines for network technicians, and so it's using AI as a means of, if you've got 1,000 NTs to train over the next few years, in a small enough facility, like how can I use things like trained avatars to actually, like in a type of video game type technology, to put themselves into a station and actually go to a particular piece of kit in the station and almost like read up a manual and fix it, right? And I think there's a really important piece here around an aging workforce in some industries where you're trying to capture tacit knowledge, and so using kind of AI then to kind of store that and have that then available to the next generation, but not having to depend on one person giving that training. So I think that's, you know, an interesting use case there where you know, it can be of benefit. And so we'll still need the same skill sets in terms of the technical capability, the project management capability, but you're using AI then to sort of augment that and maybe increase efficiency in terms of how training is delivered. I think just in addition, things that I've seen over the course of my career that, you know, maybe, you know, you didn't need when I first started out, you know, analytics, data visualization, design thinking, all of these skills really complement sort of core, you know, project management capability. You know, I think we mentioned learning by osmosis. I was lucky enough to spend time doing, you know, various activities in each phase of a delivery life cycle. You know, I was a, you know, a business analyst writing test scripts for testing. I was a, you know, writing functional designs. I was a cutover manager at one point. Like, you kind of learn about the different you know, elements of a life cycle. You build your skills, right? So we're still going to require those, and again, it's just about learning how things like AI can support us in the day to day.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And I guess, Johnny, what's your take on that as well?
Yeah, again, I think that those skills, the people side skills are always going to be needed there for a long time anyway. And it's anyone who's done any courses on communication, you know, probably come across the whatever message I give doesn't necessarily mean that's the message that's received. So having that human interaction to be able to validate and confirm, you know, if what you're saying is being understood and vice versa. And what you're hearing is what the person intends, and really a core part of that is when you're kicking off projects to defining requirements, defining objectives, you know, understanding everything that's needed to set yourself up for success. And that's where, for, as I say, a long time, I think people will always be needed, if not always be needed, full stop. I think there's a lot of tangible benefits, especially for project managers with AI and what it can do even at the moment for in-house. Some of the challenges then within my own space within consultancy is you know, being able to actually apply some of that to the clients we work with, and how best do we do that? A big question being is that where does the data sit? So for instance, we may be able to utilize AI, or we have people set up with different licenses for various applications, but you know, you can't take the data out of a client, the servers, and then, you know, apply AI to it and then put it back in. You can't do that. So it's how best then do we actually move forward with that. And I think there's a lot of cautiousness and uncertainty still within organizations and businesses. And you know, we do see the introduction of the AI Act as well, the EU AI Act, getting the balance right between you know, advancing technology and people. And I think that as organizations look to see what they can do with AI, or what they'd like to do with AI, and then make sure that they're compliant against that will help drive where the whole market looks like, or what that space looks like. But yeah, there's still a big element of wait and see. There's no doubt it can do great things, not just for project managers, for all the various different disciplines. You know, Dara, you're talking about you know, writing test scripts and different things for that BAs are involved in. But yeah, it's obviously still advancing. I'm looking forward to it, seeing where it leads us. But
Absolutely, I think we all are. And look, I might bring it into the next question just on the back of that. How can we quickly bridge the skill gap through training, hiring, and external partnerships potentially? And I guess also with the aspect of AI, you know, do you see that being a tool here? You know, on the back of what sort of Dara and yourself were saying, is that going to be a tool that we could start to leverage for maybe that younger generation, helping train them and being a resource for them? And I'll bring that to you, Johnny.
Yeah, I think AI could play a big part, especially in that training aspect, what Dara touched on, and save a lot of time even in developing the different material, and as well then you know, reducing the onus to have a sort of you know, a coach or a trainer standing at the top of a classroom. So it's a lot more on demand possibilities there, which will work to various schedules. But as well, I think it's really important to understand at the individual level what your talent pool and the individual's capabilities are, and where they are in their careers, and then developing, you know, tailored training programs for both technical and soft skills that are appropriate for them at their level or stage in their career. So we've got a big training academy at Expleo, and that guides people through from all of the recognized industry accredited programs, such as plug in a PMP course. But it's important as well that there's the other softer skills associated with that, and that may not necessarily mean that classroom led training is the best. So it's support then from your peers that can be led as well, but making sure it's a tailored approach, so that those specific areas of knowledge can be actually leveraged as well to bridge what skills gap you may need. And as a priority, I think it's trying to foster and grow that internally before you potentially need to look externally as well.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. And curious on this one from yourself there, Matthew, what your take would be.
To be honest, I'm quite. I look at it with excitement and fear at the same time. So I think when I think about our kids, I think they're going to be upskilling well into their 80s, kind of thing. I think sort of whereas before you'd had the 3-stage career where you'd study, work, retire. I think that's breaking down quite fast. AI probably has something to do with it. The demographic earthquake we're all seeing also has a lot to do with it. But clearly, the workforce is going to need to, yes, get their foundation qualifications done, but then keep training and moving along with the market as they go along. And it might not even be with one company. So again, it's a sort of two-side formula, right? So you have people who are having to reinvent themselves and upskill as they go along. You're having companies who are looking at a moving target when it comes to their workforce, both internal and extended workforce through partners. So it's becoming, yes, it's a very exciting and dynamic environment, but it can also be quite demanding. So I think things are changing quite fast, and I think I'm hoping AI helps because it's certainly driving a lot of the change. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be an exciting next few decades. Certainly.
Yeah, it is going to be very interesting. And I guess, Dara, from your perspective within EY there, like, what's your thoughts on this one? How quickly can we bridge skill gaps, and what's your thoughts on how we do it?
Yeah, look, I mean, we kind of touched on this earlier, right? I'm a massive believer in learning by osmosis, right? So there's something quickly that we can do is to try and establish that cadence of being together in a workplace, right? Particularly in project delivery environment, right? Where you might have a small or a large project team. I'm in the client side office today, right? We always come in on a Wednesday, and I get so much more out of my Wednesdays than I do my Thursdays when I'm not in the office, just because you're talking to people face to face, and it makes such a difference, right? And that's for me, right, as one of the more senior guys on the project. I would hope that it makes a difference for the more junior team as well, right? And Johnny mentioned around that maybe fear of pinging somebody over Teams and asking a question, whereas you probably wouldn't have the same fear to just lean over on an open plan floor and say, can I grab you for 1 second to ask this? So I think that is something that we can do quickly, and that will support sort of contributing to bridging potential skills gaps. I think the other thing that I've seen more and more over the years is, and Matthew mentioned this earlier, is partnerships, right? Clients are asking for more and more, and that often means that you actually can't. Some of the services that are being asked for don't get delivered by my firm or but in other firms. So how do you address that, right? Because you can't fake it, and so you have to look for opportunities to partner. And it could be, again, a very specific skill set. On my current engagement, for example, we're partnered with an economic kind of research institute. We're partnered with an electrical power research institute. So we're taking sort of capabilities that don't exist in our firm, and that don't need to necessarily, but that we can partner with then to deliver a full service for the client. So I mean, I really do think that, like, trying to solve a problem, you don't have to solve it by yourself, right? And often the best solution is actually to look at, well, who does have these skills, and can I partner with them, and can we solve it together? And that delivers a better outcome than trying to suboptimally answer problems by yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now I might bring it to some of the questions that we have in the chat here, and I know Dara, you briefly touched on this one, but Johnny, I'd be curious your thoughts. What innovative strategies have you seen successful in attracting and retaining top talent for challenging projects?
That's actually a really good part of this discussion is the the retention of the talent that you have as well. So not just identifying the gaps and how will you address them, but how do you retain them? And I think from some of the things I mentioned earlier, that whole idea of setting up that opportunity to learn from your peers. I think a lot of people are quite happy when they have a feeling or a sense that they're growing and maturing in a role. And to be able to cultivate that and support that, I think that resonates very, very well with people when they're looking for a new move and they're looking to see what does the next couple of years for me and my career look like here. So, for instance, opportunities to move horizontally, opportunities as well to maybe get involved with mentoring others as well as people progress in their careers. A lot of the times they're looking to kind of give back. That actually we all have examples of times in our careers that we found challenging. So it's trying to help others avoid those pitfalls maybe that you experienced as well. So that retention piece to me is a very important aspect to all of this as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess, Matthew, what's your take on that from a little bit of a different perspective there?
I think the crux is marrying the development requirements of people you have within your core teams with the requirements of upcoming projects, right? Because Johnny mentioned one thing, which is very valid, which is motivation, right? So people want to feel rewarded, and they feel rewarded by growing on projects. Often, though, there's a bit of a disconnect between, as things are changing so fast, there's a bit of a disconnect between the skills you've nurtured internally, right, and the current project opportunities you have at hand. And I think marrying the two, and obviously that day it's easier said than done. So it's a question of resource planning, it's a question of upskilling, it's a question of marketing on the other side, right? Just to make sure you're in the right space at the right time. So I think that the marrying of those two things is quite crucial.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Bring to the next question here, and I might stick with you, Matthew, on this one. What will be the hottest skills shortage areas be on projects in 2025? How will the market for talent pivot on these?
It's a big question, right? So I sit down with many partners and they tell me sort of many different things. As I said before, sort of where we see most interest. I mean, we're in the sort of senior engineer to architect level, right? We see a lot of interest in what I call the sexy areas, like cloud, cyber, AI data, ERPs, and then very specific technologies. I mean, one thing I hear a lot of going into 2025 with, for example, system integrators is Business Central for 2025, right? Business Central, Power Apps, there's a lot of interest in those types of areas. It's broad, Dan. It's very hard to give one answer. And as I said before, at the risk of sounding repetitive, a lot of it is combining different areas. Yep. It's the skills mixes which are most in demand, and it's actually those skills mixes which are hardest to retain and find. Really, that's the issue.
Absolutely.
But what we're seeing is a lot of excitement around. I think sort of now that the interest rates are clearly coming down, I think a lot of projects which have been put on the back burner have now been released, and there seems to be a lot more momentum in the market. So I'm expecting a lot more demand and projects sort of actually going through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And curious your take on that, Dara, as well.
Yeah, look, I'll just give maybe some insight into the type of work that I'm doing at the moment. So, there's particular targets in the climate action plan that require there to be what's called sort of flexibility on the electricity network, right? So effectively extra capacity, right? And Johnny kind of touched on it earlier as well. Like this is the challenge that every kind of network utility has in across the globe, right? Where there's capacity shortages. So we're trying to get lots of offshore renewables and onshore renewables onto the grid. We're trying to phase out fossil fuels when it's a sort of a cold day in winter, when that where the wind isn't blowing. There's often a bit of a shortage of electricity, right? So how do we solve for that? So we're trying to get people who have experience in managing this transition across the globe, and we're finding it hard, right? And so it's certainly one of the hottest sort of skill shortage areas for me in 2025 is finding that people who have that sort of what we call kind of DSO energy transition experience. One of the other things that comes with that is the operational technologies that sort of to manage the electricity network, right, are changing and need to change in order to accommodate renewables, right? And so there's big players in the market here like Oracle, like GE, and these kind of things. And again, where has this been done before? There's a sort of a finite example of people who've taken it to the next level, or network utilities who've taken it to the next level. So finding those skill sets, be they Oracle or otherwise, again is hard. So there are two examples of things that are really hot for me in the energy sector in 2025. So if anybody's out there who has Oracle network utilities experience, do reach out to me on LinkedIn. But no, seriously, it'll in some instances it'll depend on the sector, but for me they're two specific areas. And again, it comes back to all our clients are facing these same challenges at the same time. We're all looking for the same pool of resources, and globally this is everyone is facing this problem. So the amount of people who've done it is finite.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess there's probably one last question here. How can we leverage cross-functional collaboration to address the skill shortage in specific areas? And I might bring this back to you, Dara, with regards to some earlier comments of that sort of cross-training within projects and so forth. But maybe if we honed it in a little bit with regards to, okay, you've got somebody in a completely different functional part of the organization, how could you leverage their skill set and potentially bring them in to help with that skill gap?
Yeah, look, and I see someone's kind of put some suggestions in the chat, and I'd probably agree with a lot of them, right? In terms of mentorship programs and that type of thing, right? So we have formal and informal kind of mentorship programs in EY, right? So you kind of have your formal kind of career counseling relationship where you try to understand how to build your skills, but I would see myself as being an informal mentor to a lot of people, just giving feedback, whether it's being asked for or not, and requesting it, whether whether it's part of a formal performance management cycle. So I think thinking about how you can leverage your teams, even just through basic conversations, to solve a problem is really important, right? So I think that's a big component. I often on our teams, like teaming and collaboration it's all part of like our EY's new strategy, as well as actually how do we team better as a firm to solve problems for clients, right? So it's about understanding what your problem is, what skills are needed, and how and who can support you with it. And once you've identified that, then it's a simple conversation, or it's a conversation about how you can team and how you can kind of leverage that skill set. And we've given examples earlier in terms of things like lunch and learns. You may not be able to get somebody's time to give like full mentorship or coaching or whatever, but can they come in and deliver a 1 hour like kind of quick presentation on something? Can they come back again in a couple of months' time? This type of thing. You just need to they're not often complex solutions. They're complex problems, but often simple solutions for these type of things. So it's just about identifying what you need and who you need it from, and going after it.
Absolutely. And look, I'm conscious of the time here, so I might just bring this last one just to you, Matthew, with a similar sort of question. How can we leverage that cross-functional collaboration? Just curious your thoughts on that same question.
Totally aligned with Dara and Johnny, and just looking at the chat where sort of a number of solutions were sort of laid down. Obviously, sort of, I guess when you look cross-functional, don't stop at your organization, go beyond. And we've mentioned a number of new phenomena, right, in the workplace today. And there are a number of disadvantages to them, but there are loads of advantages, right? It opens up networks, it opens up talent pools. Look beyond your immediate organization, look at partnering, look beyond geographic markets. Because as Dara said, when the area is very specialized, as is sort of energy networks, etc., there's bound to be pockets of talent which are there. And you can collaborate with them, you can learn from them. And that is obviously part of the synergy we should be getting out of the new working world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I am conscious of time here. I would like to draw everyone's attention to the Q&A. Hopefully you can all see that. The PDU claim code is in there. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Johnny, Dara, and yourself, Matthew, for the excellent panel discussion here. And obviously, again, thank you to Castile for sponsoring it. So thank you, guys. I thought that was very insightful, and look forward to hearing more.
Thanks very much.
Been a
Thanks
pleasure.
very much, guys.
Really enjoyed
It's
it.
great.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.